Europe is run by people like AOC. That's the simplest explanation. If you took AOC over there and you let that half-educated demagogue talk to those people, they would agree with everything she said. She would be a hero.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Victor Davis Hanson Show. Victor is the Martin and Ely Anderson Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution and the Wayne and Marcia Buskey Distinguished Fellow in History at Hillsdale College. He is the owner of a website, The Blade of Perseus. Its address is victorhanson.com. You should be subscribing. I'll tell you why later in this episode. We are talking here on Monday, May 5th, and this particular episode will be up on Tuesday the 6th. Lots of stuff going on in the Middle East. We have, some real hijinks in Maine, stripping a Republican representative of the ability to vote. Some significant advances for, I would say, for conservatives in England. Nigel Farage's Reform Party had a good week last week in some elections. And we have NPR. There's plenty of stuff to talk about. Get Victor's wisdom on today. And we will start with the wisdom getting when we come back from these important messages. We are back with the Victor Davis Hanson Show. I'm Jack Fowler, the man who is lucky enough to ask Victor some questions. So here's a pretty big, right down the plate, swing at it, Victor. The Middle East. We have Israel. The Houthis sent a missile over and hit Israel. America responded with a couple of missiles, and now the Israelis are engaged in dropping some bombs on Yemen. And then we have Donald Trump talking about Iran and how he would like to see Iran's nuclear program dismantled, which was unclear earlier this week where he stood. So, Victor, a big ball of Middle East stuff. Take it away.
Yes, his special Mideast envoy, Mr. Stephen Witkoff, excuse me.
Yes.
Stephen Witkoff has given so many mixed signals, Jack, about 60% enrichment, 70, 80, 90, and I think they need to make this clear that Iran has the fifth largest fossil fuels as defined by gas and oil in the world, and they don't have that large of a population. In other words, they don't need any other source of energy for the rest of their existence. So when they want a nuclear program, it is for one purpose: to enrich uranium up to 90%, to get enough enriched uranium to build 10 or 12 bombs. I don't know how many of those they already have, maybe one or two, and then to find a way to miniaturize them, to put them on Chinese or North Korean supplied missiles, so that they can tell Israel, if you do this or that, we're going to take you out, and then act as crazy as they are. And that's not acting, they are crazy, so that at any moment, to quote the former prime minister, Mr. Rafsanjani, they can say, you're a one-bomb state. Everybody knows that. So why are we negotiating with them? We're negotiating with them for a variety of reasons. Number one, the MAGA doctrine is no optional military use of force in the Middle East. That's clear. That's what he ran on. That is the Steve Bannon, Tucker Carlson, you name it, wing. That's what's behind the fight with Pete Hegseth and the people who were removed. They may have been leaking that Pete was under the capture of the neoconservatives. There are no neoconservatives. I don't know anymore. They don't exist, in the sense that they want to nation build and slay dragons all over the world. But nevertheless, that's the problem, number one. Number two, Donald Trump does want to be a Nobel laureate. I don't mean that in a deprecatory fashion at all. He's done enormous things already with the Ukraine war. We're closer than any moment in the Biden administration. He would like to be the person who denuclearizes Iran. The problem is that the people he's dealing with make Vladimir Putin look rational. They're crazy. And he knows that right now in this window, at this moment, he has more leverage than any other president has had in the half century into which these fanatics came into power. There is no Assad Arab receptacle for their terrorist money and arms to disperse. There is no Hezbollah to speak of for another year, maybe. There is no Hamas. They're in the tunnels. And the Houthis may send a missile, but they are scattered. And Iran has no air defenses. Israel proved that to the world. So if Donald Trump wants to take out its nuclear facilities, he can do it with minimal risk. So can Israel. That's a lot of pressure. So he thinks that he's going to tell them, this is your last chance over the next couple of months. You can negotiate a deal with us, and you will get to keep your regime. But we do not want you to send money to the Middle East, all of your tentacles. No, they're cut off. And I just don't believe they're ever going to do that. That's their reason to be. And they're very unpopular. So now the question is maximum pressure. Are you going to keep pressuring them and pressuring them? They have power outages. They have minority resistance. They have popular pushback, but none of that in the past 50 years, even the Green Revolution that Obama basically ignored or wanted to fail, they've never been able to overthrow that government because it runs by terror. And I don't think they will be able to. So sometime at the end of the year, one of two things will happen. They will feel the squeeze so much that they will try to cut a deal. And if they do cut a deal, I can guarantee you they will break the deal in some manner or other. That's who they are. Or Donald Trump will do one of three things. He will tell the Israelis, whatever's in your interest, go ahead and do it, and we will keep the Chinese and the Russians out, and the North Koreans. You can do what you want. Or he will join a joint force with Israel. That'll be a little tricky if he does that. Or he will just do it himself. And we kind of see that, Jack, with the Houthi reply. Israel's going to reply, and we are going to reply, but they're not joint operations. They're separate. And I don't know quite, I think the Houthis' status is more like Hamas. They're burrowed deep, they're disconnected, but they don't have a big command and control center and one big depot. They've scattered everything everywhere, and they're getting down to a small number of weapons. But the idea that this hypersonic missile, and they bragged about it, they said it was a hypersonic missile, and they said they were able to shut down the Ben Gurion airport, and they did for a few hours, and they said they'll do it again. No nation, no sovereign nation, no autonomous nation can have that happen. You can't have an entity say you can't have an airport. That's the whole nexus of travel and commerce. So they're going to have to deal with that. And the only way to deal with the Houthis is cut off the supply of where they're getting these weapons. And they're only getting the weapons from one place, and that is Iran. So you either have to deal with removing the regime in Iran or destroying all of their depots and their ability to make these missiles. That's where we are. And Donald Trump's going to have a problem within the MAGA rank. I wrote that article in New Criterion when he assumed office about the contradictions in MAGA between being a Jacksonian and a neo-isolation, a Buchananite or a Ron Paulite. And that's a lot of people. But he proved in the first administration, when he bombed the proverbial blank out of ISIS, when he killed Mr. Baghdadi, when he got rid of Soleimani, when he wiped out the Wagner Group, that he is perfectly capable of retaliatory, responsive strikes to ensure U.S. deterrence. And I think that's what he'll do. I think he'll negotiate all summer long, and at some point it'll dawn on him that they're playing him. And then he will then bring in his commanders and say, what is the feasibility? And they'll say, if you're ever going to do this, this is the year to do it. Because the surrogates are, they're cut off from the octopus head, and they're flopping around on the deck. They can't do anything. They can't hurt anybody right now. And it's an unpopular regime. It's just a matter of then how you do it. Do you do everything? Do you take out the nuclear enrichment sites? Do you try to bomb anything you think might be a depot of one or two stray bombs that are somewhere in the country? Do you take out the port facilities and spike oil prices? Do you take out all of its military capability? And what degree of punishment do you inflict on the Iranian people, if any? So these are all complex questions.
There's no real sense of peace, though, Victor, unless this regime is somehow overthrown or destroyed. So I wonder how nuanced that is for the MAGA coalition. Not against nation building, yes, but this is really a matter of defense of us, because these SOBs want to come get us sooner or later. Did you see that the Brits stopped some terror attack,
Yes,
Iranian terror
yes.
attack?
They caught 4 or maybe even 5 Iranian terrorists, and they were on the verge. World War II anniversary parade. They were going to stage a spectacular terrorist attack, according to the authorities. And these were the people who tried to kill Donald Trump, as we know that. And they've blown up Jews in Argentina. They killed dissidents. They've killed dissidents in the United States. They tried to kill a Saudi ambassador in the United States a few years ago. They're completely out of control, and it's just a question of how. And then they have people, as we've talked about, that have infiltrated sympathizers. I mean, the Harvard University just let one of their board of governors of their Middle East program go because he had pro-Hamas sympathies, and we have people in the Pentagon that had pro-Iran sympathies during the Biden years. So they're deeply involved in the United States and Europe, and they hate us with a passion, and they have a chip on their shoulder. In the Middle East, they feel that the Shia, the Persians, have been persecuted. They have been the minority religion. They have been the minority race, the Sunni Arabs, and have all the power. And under Obama, they felt, given those Javier and Kerry talks, which, by the way, went on apparently stealthily during the Trump first administration, so much for the left wing's celebration of the Logan Act. But anyway, the point is they feel that Obama had empowered them as a legitimate half of the Middle East, and then the other Sunni half, they would fight back and forth, and then Obama would adjudicate. So they are, there's nothing positive about them. Everybody likes Iranians. They're nice people. They've had a distinguished history going back to the Achaemenid dynasty. I mean, they're a very sophisticated society, but for some reason, and I think a lot of it is they've lost millions of people who have left. Some of their top people have left, but they don't have a nucleus that is going to rise up and take power. Everybody says they are, and they're
Right.
not.
Yeah.
No matter how bad it gets, no matter if we put the squeeze on them, if power outage, it's not going to happen. And everybody seems to know it.
No
And the
John
only way to
Adams.
do it is to defang. I don't know what I'm not a Persian expert. I don't know what the reaction would be among the Iranian people, whether their feeling of patriotism and anger at the West for defanging the theocracy's nuclear capability would outweigh their delight in seeing this government humiliated.
Right.
Get mixed signals.
Well, the people
Israel
most.
humiliated it when it took out some of its air defenses, and you got both. We were told people liked that, and we were told people were angry about it.
Victor, since I mentioned Britain, let's stick with Britain. There were local elections last week, and Nigel Farage, who founded UKIP, along with Dan Hannan, kind of like a left-right, little highbrow, well, I don't want to call Nigel Farage lowbrow, but he certainly has the common touch. Guy survived an airplane crash also. He's a remarkable guy. Anyway, his Reform Party made huge local gains in local elections, took over a number of municipalities, coming at the expense mostly of the British Tory government, but also at the expense of Labour. So they are running. Reform is now in charge of some cities, and Farage came out today with some comments about how they are going to stop this practice of just taking over hotels and putting these. Are they illegal immigrants in England? I don't know. I'll call them that.
Oh, yes, there
Kind
are.
of destroying these cities and destroying England, I think. So anyway, it's a interesting turn of events there. I don't know that it's particularly surprising, but what are your thoughts about Farage and what he's done here with reform?
Well, I think a lot of these conservative parties that have been in the wilderness they're very enthused about Donald Trump. Not just that he was elected, but it's electrifying if you read some of the European newspapers when they look at the border, because they imagine themselves in a similar position. They have been told for years that you either, in the globalized world of Klaus Schwab, etc., in the UN, you don't enforce a border. That's a 19th century relic. Or they have been told that they cannot really control borders. Fences are inadequate, which is a lie, or a wall. Or they have been told that it's not good, that they have a failing. Europeans are about 1.4 in their fertility rate, and therefore they need the people. Elon Musk has been very eloquent. He's absolutely right, and he's the most candid, that when we try to find a answer for the inexplicable, why would Joe Biden let 12 million people in without any audit at the same time they were harassing Americans in 2021 for not having the Moderna, the Pfizer vaccination, or they were drumming people out of the military, some of our best soldiers, and yet you were letting these people come right across the border with no audit, no measles audit, nothing. And the answer was they wanted constituents. They wanted constituents for big government. They wanted to swell the people dependent on social welfare. They wanted to mail in and early voters. And the same is true, I think, in Europe. They want cheap labor, but they also want the classic constituency for left-wing redistribution, big government. So my point is, they look at Trump and they say, he actually kind of solved the problem, and it is solvable. And he's kind of empowered people in Poland, but especially in Hungary, the Czech Republic, Romania, and now in Britain. And Farage is sort of like the alternative for Deutschland, in the sense that he's beyond the pale as far as conservatives. The conservatives in Europe, if everybody looks at the European political system, it is one step to the left. So their liberal or Labor Party is like AOC, the extreme wing. Our Democratic Party, the old Democrat, is their conservative party. And what they call fascist right wing, beyond the pale right wing, is sort of just mainstream MAGA. And I think and so they can't stand that. Their whole European project has about 7 things that you can't question. You cannot question overregulation. You cannot question big deficits. You cannot question transgenderism. You can't question climate change. You cannot question open borders. To do any of that makes you a right-wing fascist Hitler. And they're trying to, as you saw with the AfD, they won't even let them form a political party alliance with some of the conservatives. Conservatives don't like him. And then same thing with Farage. He's considered taboo. But the problem they're having is that Europe doesn't work and Britain doesn't work. And when I say that, I just look at, I don't get any delight out of it. I would love them to be prosperous and strong like they have been. But when you look at their fertility rate at 1.4 something, and then you look at their GDP, Germany's been flat for 2 years. The EU is anemic. And then you look at their wind and solar and their Green New Deal, and you look what's happened in Spain and Portugal with these massive outings. You look at the price of energy in Germany is 4 times what it is in the United States in most places. And then you look at the borders. When you're getting up in some of these countries, 15, 16, 17% of people not born in your country. And unlike the United States, it seems to integrate, intermarry, and assimilate people much easier. And we're having a problem with it. You go to Germany and you go to areas of Berlin, it looks like the Middle East. If you go to areas of outside Rotterdam or outside Paris, those outer boroughs, it's the same thing. And these people are coming over there not because they want to be French or German or British. They feel that Westerners are rich and leisured and decadent. And they want to come over and, through demographics, become the dominant force and institutionalize Islam. And they hate European tradition. And they're going to try to do through demography what arms could not. And that's just a fact. And so there's people in these countries that say, not on my watch, I'm going to stop this, just like Trump in, mutatis mutandis with different conditions. Trump is saying the same thing, and they're energized by Trump because he seems to be successful. And we'll see
Yeah.
how they, as this populist backlash rises, the more that they go after Farage, or more they go after the Romanian conservatives, or the more they go after the AFDF, it's like, it's like heating up the kettle and not letting the steam out. It's going to get more and more and more. If they were wise, they would let these people participate in the main body politic. They would tell the media, don't demonize them. They're not Hitler. They have legitimate gripes that represent a majority of the population, but they're not going to do that. Europe is run by people like AOC. That's the simplest explanation. If you took AOC over there and you let that half-educated demagogue talk to those people, they would agree with everything she said. She would be a hero.
Maybe she is. Layered onto the British situation, Victor, is the grooming scandal, which I remain shocked over. It's been going on for so long. These rape gangs protected by the local governments who have been afraid to arrest or enforce or protect these usually white, young women who are just
I don't know. I think
toys
that's
in the hands of these perverted men, mostly Pakistani, and you have a nation sitting there watching this happen, and there's nothing being done about it. There's no justice being, and I
no,
think
it's not.
This gets into the boiling over aspect of.
It's it's a plague upon Western civilization in general. One of the greatest tragedies, and the worst thing in my life is to watch the collapse of Western jurisprudence. And by that I mean, the law is being used to achieve political purposes. And I mean that not in the generic sense, but left-wing political purposes. So your racial background, your religious background, your political ideology, that determines the degree to which, if you're a prosecutor in Minnesota and somebody has vandalized and terrorized people about Tesla, you're not going to be prosecuted. Not like if you walked into the rotunda when the door was open, you walked around and gazed and you didn't do anything, not one violent act. You could be, and you were, arrested and put in jail for 4 or 5 months or longer because you were a political prisoner. And that's a scary thing. And when we see these big city, in the United States, we see these big city prosecutors are letting these felons out to prey on almost everybody who's injured by an illegal alien. We learn that the person was let out qua illegal alien. It was an idea that, and we saw that reified with Judge Dugan. She was a very valuable exemplar because she said to us, this is the left-wing attitude. We feel that our moral compass is stronger than the law, and even custodians of the law will not follow it if we feel in our considered opinion that it doesn't have moral force. So I have determined that letting an illegal alien out, denying the victims of his brutality and violence to see justice in my courtroom, and to impede federal officers in an entirely federal matter. They have a detainer on him, and to risk their lives if they have to go out of the courtroom and chase him down and who knows what level of violence. I don't care about that. I'm going to break all those statutes and protocols. And that's what's wrong with the law. We saw it with Alvin Bragg and Fannie Willis and Jack Smith and Letitia James and Judge Engoron. We saw it with the two-faced treatment of Donald Trump's documents versus Joe Biden's document. We've seen it everywhere in Europe, the way they have never said to a... I was laughing at the AFD, what they did to them and the Romanians. Don't you remember during the 70s, Jack? I think you're a little younger than I am, but you can remember the Communist Party came to power as a coalition in Italy, and these communist parties were open. Nobody ever outlawed the Communist Party. They were the direct descendants of a Communist Party that at one time controlled the Soviet Union and China that was responsible between the two of them 100 million deaths. And no European said we're going to outlaw the Communist Party, even though we were in a Cold War with the Soviet Union, and we knew that communist parties in Europe, when they came to power, had leaked and tried to pass information to our existential enemy.
Even in the 80s, the French Communist Party had a noticeable representation in the parliament.
So the left has taken the law and they have used it in lieu of popular support to destroy their enemies. They can't win. And in the United States, the Democratic Party has decided the following. We stand for biological men and women's sports, and there's no support. We stand for an open border, there's no support. We stand against all deportations, and there's no support. We stand for decriminalizing the law. There's no support. We stand for modern monetary theory, and there's no support. We stand for woke DEI, racial preferences, bias, and prejudice, and there's no support. Therefore, we only have two alternatives. Actually, maybe they have three. We are going to use the federal lower court system and empower these judges who want to be famous to expand their authority well beyond their regional districts. And I guess you would call them judge, jury, and executors. Establish the law as we want it that nobody wants. That's number one. Or number two, we are going to use the media to so demonize and call our opponents Hitler, fascist, ASSH, all this potty talk, all these smutty videos. We're going to create so much chaos that you just want Donald Trump out. We don't care if it's his fault or not, but if we got him out, then things would be nice. We'd be back to the Biden years. Or, and that's the other thing, or we're just not going to, we don't follow the law. The law doesn't, for us, it does not exist. For you, it does. So you don't dare ever impeach a Democratic president. We're going to try to do Trump a third time. You don't dare say that Joe Biden's family is crooked and go raid his home after he's president. We did that to Donald Trump. You don't dare try to take a Democrat off the ballot if you're in a red state. We did that in 25 states. So that's where we are. And again, the common denominator, they don't have popular support. Nobody wants that agenda. Nobody. Even the mainstream Democrats don't.
Yeah. Well, Victor, we're going to pound down more on that because there's a real terrible situation, I think, in Maine. I'm pretty sure you think it also. So we have some Maine politics. I'll have another follow-up on lawfare. We'll get to your thoughts on these things when we come back from these important messages. We'll return to our program shortly, but first, an important message about your financial future. Have you noticed gold's remarkable movement? While headlines focus on record gold prices, what's really happening is our dollars are losing value at an accelerating rate. Gold isn't expensive. It's doing exactly what it's done for 5,000 years, maintaining consistent purchasing power while paper currencies weaken. It's like a financial measuring stick showing the truth about our shrinking dollar. Many investors hesitate, thinking they've missed the opportunity because gold seems high. This fundamental misunderstanding keeps them from acting until it's too late. When currencies begin to falter, gold doesn't inch higher. It typically makes dramatic moves that leave unprepared investors behind. American Alternative Assets created a free wealth protection guide to help safeguard your retirement savings. Call 833-2-USA-GOLD or visit victorlovesgold.com today. That's 833-287-2465 or visit victorlovesgold.com. Protect what you've earned before the opportunity vanishes. Hey folks, we're back with the Victor Davis Hanson Show. It is Monday, the 5th of May that we're recording, and today's episode will be up on Tuesday the 6th. Gloomy day here in Milford, Connecticut. I don't know, we're going to have a whole week of rain, Victor. I hope you have some rain out there. In sunny California. Is it gloomy California?
Nada. I'm trying to look at the report, and it says on my little phone, Jack, nothing on the horizon. Although it's usually past the rainy season So we can't expect to have such gifts in April and May.
Speaking of gifts in May, Victor, it'd be nice to give a gift of the subscription to the Victor Davis Hanson website, The Blade of Perseus. If you're a mom, Mother's Day is coming up in a few days, or Father's Day will be here soon, or for yourself, a subscription is $65 a year. It's $6.50 a month. Why would you subscribe? Because Victor writes 2 exclusive pieces every week and 1 exclusive video every week for his website. And in addition to that, you'll find the links to his weekly essays for American Greatness, his syndicated column, numerous other appearances,
Hey, Jack,
archives
I
of
have
these
a little
podcasts.
idea.
Oh, yeah,
We
go
were
ahead,
talking
Victor.
about illegal immigration in Europe,
Yes.
and all of these people, like Judge Dugan, are removed from the actual consequences of illegal. So I was walking today on a farm that my great-great-grandmother and her sons, my great-grandfather came, and it was an artesian pond. It's right next to it. My siblings who inherited that part of the farm sold it. But here, I don't know if you can see it, but here's what it looked like this morning.
Dang. Well, it's far worse than when you've talked about it. Yeah,
Yeah, there it
the
is.
pond. Yep.
And there were some nice appliances floating in there. And all of the literature had 2 things in common: the trash, the wet garbage, because I kind of poked around it. One, it was all in Spanish, and 2, there was not one indication of one envelope where the address was still there. It had been filtered. And 2 nights ago, somebody was walking on the place, and I came around on my property, and he came around in a 4-wheeler about 40 miles an hour, almost hit me, and I jumped out in front of him. They had kind of uh, road warrior, big kind of goggles and helmets, and they were Hispanic, and I was talking to them. I think they had some connection with what I saw, but they told me that I said, "This is my property." That didn't register. I mean, there's no sense that it's your property. It's our property. That's the left wing idea. There is no such thing as. But they said, yes, that they were on my property, but they were patrolling it to make sure that people didn't throw trash. And I said, if you're patrolling it for me, that they don't throw trash, you're doing a very poor job. Well, we're trying to get better. And then,
How old were they,
oh,
you
they were
think?
about 25, 30. But one guy was very surly. He didn't like the idea that the other person was trying to be cooperative.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they had arms or what. But my point is, when all of these people like Judge Dugan talk about illegal immigration, and they don't ever think of the consequences. So illegal alien A comes in and breaks the law. Then if comes in without impunity and with exemption, then he thinks they must want me here, or they would. So then I'm going to reside illegally. If I have to reside illegally to facilitate my illegality, maybe I'll get by a false ID. And then they're going to put me in an area with other illegal aliens where we're all going to be exempt from worry about until Trump. And so when I look at my environs, I see all these ancient farmhouses, and I see 10, 20 people. So I said to these people, which compound do you live at? The one with 50 people, the one with 30 people, the one with 20 people, the one with the horses, the one with the chickens, the one with the 40 dogs, which one? And they just said somewhere. They didn't want to say. But my point is that these are the real things that happen to people in their daily lives. And when you call up a doctor or a specialist, and they say, well, you have a sinus infection, well, we can get you in 2 months. And then you go to a urologist or one of the specialists, and there used to be 3 people in the waiting room, and there's 15. And you have 2 minutes rather than 10 or 15. That's the reality in places like California. 40% of the state is on Medicaid, what we call Medi-Cal. And many of them just came across the border. So Judge Dugan is a very caring person. Yes, she is. And she goes back to her very caring house and shuts the door with her very caring, nice neighborhood. And the same as all these lawyers are now trying to sue and stop on the theory that it was okay and lawful to break the law and allow 12 million people in, but it is illegal and unlawful now to enforce the law and ask them to go back home where they came from. So we don't have one person who was stopped at the border and said, you can't go anywhere because we have to have due process. You're you're breaking the law right now. We're going to detain you, put you in a cell, and you're going to wait until we can give you a judge. No, you just go. But if we apprehend you and we want to send you back, well, then we have to have 12 million of these hearings, and you can show up because we'll give you good law. That's the idea behind it. But what I was getting at with this cheap little performance art trick was that's what people's land looks like when you have massive amounts of a demographic that has large percentages of people here illegally.
Yeah,
And they have the idea that, you know what? There's 10 or 12 of us here. We only have one garbage can we have to pay for. They do one of two things. They either just throw their trash out, or some of them are entrepreneurial. They'll go around to other illegal communities with a truck and say, hey, I'm the garbage man. They'll pay them money, and then they'll come outside to a farm. And then I drove this morning right around the corner on a big uh, the person who farms my place farms this place as well, but it's got a big it has ample space between the road and the almond orchard, and you should see it, Jack. That poor guy, he goes through there every week to take stuff out. There is a refrigerator. There is cars and seats that have taken out of a wrecked car. There is a washing machine. There is tons of plastic child seats from a car. There's everything thrown along the side of the road, and all of the standpipes have red and blue block, gang, Gothic. It's like nothing's ever seen. And what we're supposed to do is say, Victor, you don't judge these things. You lived in a racist, sexist, illiberal society in the 50s, 60s, and 70s when this didn't exist. So this is karma for you and people like you, because the other now is in control, and we don't worry about little petty things like whether you're a citizen or whether you came in legally or whether you have a green card or whether you know the language of the country of which you want to venture into or the civic nature of its constitution. Nothing. We're just going to throw stuff out. And it's all empowered by the wealthy bi-coastal elite who make these laws that never suffer any of this.
Yeah.
They never have anything. I see them because I work with them at Stanford.
I would encourage you to put those pictures up on your website.
I think I will. I did once, and it's all. I mean, it's not as bad as once. Once I had a 600-foot row, 600 feet, and a flatbed came out. I could see the tire tracks, and he unloaded the whole thing. 600 feet of light bulbs, neon bulbs, used paint cans, wet garbage. There was some kind of from a chicken ranch, dead chickens, everything. And he just threw it in between the vineyard. And when I called the sheriff, I think I mentioned this, the sheriff said, you got a problem, Mr. Hanson, because you didn't see the person do it. And all of this is toxic. And California environmental law says you've got to get rid of it. And you can only get rid of it by calling a licensed environmental person. Otherwise, you're going to be cited for suspicion of dumping all of your own trash here. I said, yes, I would dump my own trash in my own vineyard. And so I had to dispose of it myself, and I filtered through it for about, 6 months and tried to put stuff in the bin that was dumped. But they wanted me to cart it all the way to a hazardous waste dump. And that time, because the person who dumped it was a carrier, he didn't care about sifting through it. Maybe he told the people he was legit. So there were names and addresses there, Jack. And I gave them to the law enforcement officer. And he just said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go to these people's homes. So that's where you are. And it's so funny about the left. All of this goes up against their cherished. If you notice about the cherished thing about the left, They always told us that one of the canons of liberalism was ecology and environmentalism. And yet they judge environmentalism not by the act itself or the desecration of the environment. And by that I mean when the pond fills up, like the snowmelt is hard. It's very sad to see this ancient. I used to swim in it, and you see now diapers floating on the top, and trash and plastic bottle all over. It is environmental desecration. But because the people who did it are an exempt group, then there's no such thing. It's kind of like transgenderism. We always thought female sports were going to catch up and get equity and parity and inclusion and diversity with male sports. And then all of a sudden, a new cause celeb for the left puts them down on the moral ledger, and suddenly transgendered men have preference. And if they can beat the heck out of a woman in a boxing match or a volleyball, it doesn't matter. That's the new left-wing cause celeb. Or it's the same thing about violence toward women. We were told during Me Too, the worst thing. Even Harvey Weinstein, was he ever convicted of hitting a woman?
I don't think hitting.
Sexual assault, maybe.
Right. Rape.
Yes, but I don't know if
but
he actually beat up a woman. But we've had all these incidents of men hitting women.
the second husband of the United States.
Doug him. There was two people
He
who
was
said that
convicted,
he
but
slapped a woman.
Yep.
And he should have been charged with assault. And we had Mr. Obrego Garcia, and there was new information out, as you saw, Jack, over the weekend, that she said that she woke up in the middle of the night and he was assaulting her. He assaulted the children. He put them in danger. She was afraid, she said, that he would kill her and no one would care. And she was afraid of his family. And nobody cares. And so suddenly the women, after the Me Too problem, and then we saw the person in Judge Dugan, I think his name was Flores Ruiz, and he didn't like the music, so he beat up his roommate 30 times, and he beat up his girlfriend, the roommate's girlfriend, and he beat up the peacemaker that was trying to separate them. And Judge Dugan, who must be a feminist, says, I don't really care that he beat up a woman. He's a new cause celeb, and illegal aliens under the Trump administration now have a higher moral score than women who get beat up. So that's my cause, and I don't care about the other causes.
Well,
it's really weird how they do this.
If Luigi, whatever his last name is, Mangione, she may have let him out.
You're an Italian. Come on.
Yeah. What if he was in her court? Would she have not let him out the side door too? I mean, why not?
I wonder if she has her ticket to the comic opera about his life that's being played in San Francisco.
Victor, this happened 4-5 months ago, right? The murder happened, maybe, and already the art community, the left-wing art community of the United States, has some musical about this guy.
He killed a man who was born from the lower middle class, worked himself up, had 2 children, orphaned them, and no one cares on the left. He's a hero. Just like we had, same thing with Elon Musk had a tweet. I don't know if it's accurate. I do know that half of it's accurate. Half of it is the Media Research Center, and we know that group. They do good work.
Yep.
Yeah, 96% of all news coverage was negative of Elon Musk. Elon said that it was the same as the news coverage of Obrego Garcia, which was positive.
96% positive,
but
yes.
I couldn't find whether that was true, so I can't make that statement. But I do know that I did do Google searches when I read that, and every single thing, when I said Obrego Garcia, I wrote Obrego Garcia, wife beater, Obrego Garcia, assaulter, illegal. I used every pejorative word, and everything that came up was still positive on Google, getting their algorithms. And so here's a man who reinvented, I shouldn't say invented the EV industry, saved NASA, saved social media, gives more satellites than all the governments probably in the world put together, and he's demonized. This is a very sick group of people, the left, that are doing these things. They have
Can
no
I tell you,
morality or ethics.
The back end of this also, Victor, is in New York. There was an article in the New York Post this weekend. The 48th convicted cop killer is having his parole hearing. 47 since 2018, when the laws were changed here. When Andrew Cuomo, who's now running for mayor of New York City, when he was governor, they passed a whole new parole apparatus and filled the parole board with left-wingers. 47 guys who have murdered New York City police officers have been given parole. And some of them have been like directly assassinated. It wasn't a
Yeah,
gunfight.
I
It was
know it.
come up behind you in a cop car and blow your brains out. And this is what jurisprudence is. This is the other end of lawfare.
I think
For,
what it's doing, it's building, 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 building up. So the left is just shocked that after the 100 days and the 96 also negative of Donald Trump and all of the fake polls, Larry Kudlow was very eloquent showing that they were fake and that they deliberately underrepresented by a third Trump voters who were underpolled. So they would get this only 43, 44% of Trump. But the point is that we're getting to the point now where they can't figure out why Trump is popular because Rasmussen had him 50-49, Trafalgar Insider Advantage had him 46-44. After all they've done, 95%, he's still popular. And he's popular because of the things we talked about. He's popular because of Trump as Trump, but he's also popular because of the alternative. The alternative is anti-civilization. It's chaos. It's barbarism. It's tribalism. It's pre-civilizational. And just to put a finale to our mutual round, did you see in the California legislature that they passed a bill which Gavin Newsom says he's going to oppose to almost decriminalize to end felony consequences for older men to solicit sex from 16 and 17-year-old boys. And that has been a part that if you looked at that man-boy love association and that idea of resurrecting ancient pederasty, which we read about in Greek literature from Plato to Anacreon, it's everywhere. But
yeah,
they really do feel that they're Greek philosophers, and if they cloak their unlawful and amoral desires to have sex with a young boy, I think 16 qualifies for that, and they can cloak it with some type of intellectual rigor or moral philosophizing, then they think they're Socrates or Plato or something, although Socrates never reified his lust. They were all, we were told, in Plato, intellectual. But that is really sick. And I thought that the left wing always said we're here for the children. That's what Hillary said. That's what Nancy Pelosi said. This is all about the children. We're here to protect kids.
yeah.
We're here
Well,
to protect
it's what
kids.
the sex traffickers are there for. They're there for the children also. I
Yeah.
mean,
So
this is
do you really believe that a grown man who drives in his car and drives down somewhere in West Hollywood and sees a 16-year-old boy walking along and gets out of his car and walks up to him and offers him $200, that he's worried about his moral education? Is that what it is? Pederasty? Is that what it is?
Victor, before we get to our last break, you were about that bill you were talking about. Guy Benson posted something, but he posted a tweet that was about an Assembly Democrat, Mark Gonzalez, who's from Los Angeles.
Yes.
He went on an unhinged rant. He attacked I believe is a gay Republican member
Yes,
of
he
the state
did.
assembly, Carl DeMaio, attacked him for being gay, but somehow voting against the civil rights, I love this, quote unquote, civil rights of gay people by wanting to make it a felony to solicit 16 and 17-year-olds. So now that is the expansion of that concept of civil rights by the LGBTQ plus community is kind of staggering.
Yeah, I think Guy, who's a very bright and principled person, I think he's trying to say, either explicitly, but I think explicitly and overtly, is that this is not supported by the gay community, who has the same worries about the detrimental effect of sexual intercourse on young people, usually in an asymmetrical fashion, than the heterosexual community. And we would, if it's felonious to go out and pick up a 16-year-old girl and then have sex with her, then it should be the same thing regardless of one's sexual orientation. But Mr. Gonzalez, if you follow his train of thought, follow it through, Jack. He's saying Mr. Smith goes out and he picks up knowingly a 16-year-old boy, and he has sexual congress with this boy, whether he pays him or not, and therefore he should get a misdemeanor slap on the wrist. Most misdemeanors, people, they're just booked and they go home. And sometimes they're not even booked immediately. That's what he's saying should be the penalty. And I think he's saying that gay people, because they're a persecuted minority, he thinks that should get special exemption. But I thought his party cared about the children, and he doesn't, obviously.
Well, Victor,
I've never
go ahead.
seen times like this. Never have seen times like this in my entire life. It's not just that I'm old and cranky, but I've never seen it before. Not even during the craziness of the 60s. We had more terrorism than violent, but not like this. Not this idea that a man can say that he is a woman and then go in a boxing or fencing match and defeat a woman. And then, when he's a mediocre athlete, and when transgendered males, that is women who become males, don't win one single event, and we're supposed to think that it doesn't matter what your biological sex was.
Victor, I want to encourage our listeners and viewers to check out a City Journal, which you're on the masthead of that as a contributor. There's a piece by Christina Buttons about man-boy love. It's titled, "This Group Wants to Affirm Pedophilia." So I guess this past weekend, there's a group called Before You Act, a Maryland-based organization that's, pro pedophilia, and they were hosting a conference in Ohio to train mental health providers in affirmative MAP therapy. MAP means minor attracted persons. So this is, I know we're going to see this justified through the mental health community, that the MAP is a real thing, and it's natural. It's not some perversion. Anyway, this is what is happening right now, and I want to recommend that article to folks
Yeah,
that
I
are.
think we're in the third stage, and the third and last stage of liberalism. Liberalism started, I think it was, it was a flawed idea in most of its manifestations, but it was trying to get equality of opportunity for blacks, for women, for everybody in the 50s and 60s, greater and legislated. And then the second stage was, well, we did that, but we still don't have equality of result. So therefore, they began affirmative action, diversity, and they wanted a equality mandated on the back end. We called it proportional representation or disparate impact, but we didn't really care about the individual. We just wanted demographics to show that we had gone into stage 2 of the civil rights movement. Now we're in the lunatic stage 3, in which all of the liberal canons of stage 1 and 2 are thrown out because we want to make mainstream or equal, or make sure that people who we would prior have called criminals, that is, people who prey sexually on youth, or felons that are in jail and should not be voting when they come out, or people who kill policemen, we feel that they are the last horizon of victims. And we're going to use all of our influence to make sure that they're just like us and they don't face any consequences for their deviant behavior, because we don't believe it's deviant. We think that a bunch of white Christian heterosexual, I'm quoting Susan Rice now when she got fired from the Defense Policy Board by Pete Hegseth, white Christians, cisgendered male has gone after us. They feel that they have gone after us and set arbitrary rules against us. Just because a white Christian cisgendered male doesn't shoot policemen as often as other people may not, I don't know the demographics, please correct me if the FBI statistics prove me wrong, that's the only reason it's illegal. Just because white cisgender Christian males do not solicit young boys in the same percentage as other people, they made a law against it, Jack. They don't like Michael Jordan Air shoes, so they say you can't steal them. That's the critical legal theory. That's what it's about. And it's really, I keep going back to this famous novel. It was written in the age of Nero, probably 60 AD to 65. It was one of my PhD areas of interest, the Latin text of the Petronius the Satyricon. But everything I just talked about is in there. Everything. Transgenderism, sexual violence, pedophilia, pederasty, gluttony, ostentatious wealth, nudity, child pornography, you name it, it's in there. And it's a bitter satirical novel to show what the leisure and affluence of the early Roman Empire has done to the old Italian agrarian ethos, and it's destroyed them. And Trimalchio is the gluttonous, half-educated boor, and all the sophisticated people who are at the dinner making fun of him are themselves worse. It's just the most damning portrait of a society that has destroyed its legacy and heritage, and it's very modern, but cross-dressing, it's in there. Cross-dress, transvestism, transgenderism, transsexualism, sexual assault, sexual battery, pedophilia, pederasty, everything is in there. Pornography is in there.
Well, there seems to be a bottoming out of the irreligiosity or the people, leaving faith and some signs of renewal of belief. So I have a feeling, Victor, these things in our world now in 2025 are connected, religious worship and these variations of depravity or weirdness.
I think
So,
you're right. I think they're afraid when all this hysteria about the 100 days, they're afraid it might work. And if it worked, it's the first time that a Republican president has tried to wage a true counter-revolution. Reagan didn't do it. George H.W. Bush turned on Reagan with a kinder, gentler nation, read my lips. George W. Bush was more conservative, but even he didn't try to do this. This president is saying that in the 11th hour, we're going to wage a cultural, social, economic, political, diplomatic, military counter-revolution. We're going to stop all of this. We're going to make these universities return to their proper role. We're going to tell the PBS and corporate NPR propagandists, you can't do that on the public dime. It's really multifaceted, and part of that is a traditionalist emphasis on religion and also on the American founding. And the whole theme is you don't have to be perfect to be good. And America was always better than the alternative. And your desire or your demand that we have to be perfect according to your 21st century mores, it's irrelevant. That's never happened in history. Sorry, we're not going to play that game.
yeah.
That's what he's doing.
It's backed up in the rhetoric of his executive orders. It's I encourage people to read them. Go to the whitehouse.gov website, click on executive actions, look at the text of these executive orders. I mean, it is very much in line, totally in line, Victor, with what you're saying. We're fighting a cultural battle here. And it's not holding back the dawn. It's not pussyfooting. It's not a rear guard action. This is a battle.
No, he's saying you don't have to go to a museum and see a bunch of excrement thrown on the canvas and say that's art. We're going to champion classical art, impressionist art. You're not going to have to see a building that looks like a tinker toy and say that's a great piece of architecture. We're going to try to bring back appreciation for neoclassical architecture, sculpture. We've talked about that before with Sabinhauer, Yeah, and we're trying to do this all across the board. Great literature, and same
Religious
thing with
liberty. He just put he
religious
created
liberty.
Religious Liberty Commission and one after the other. It's really almost breathtaking.
And there's a lot of people who want to join this, and that's why they're angry. Is what I'm getting at. The 100 days, they think this guy, I don't know what he's doing, but he's trying to wreck the liberal, progressive, socialist, communist project. And we don't know where he got these ideas, but when he closed the border, when he is re-establishing deterrence, when he is getting people to pump more oil. He's trying to get prices down for the middle class. 62%, Jack, of Hispanics polled in that respite. That was the highest ethnic group favoring Trump. I
Wow.
had been saying that in these podcasts, that every time I went into my local community and I was stopped by a Mexican American male, but all Mexican Americans, and they mentioned politics, they were overwhelmingly for Trump. They didn't give a blank about the stock market. They did give a lot of attention to the price of gas, the price of electricity, the regulations, how hard it was for them if they were contractors, the lack of good paying jobs, the crime that of people dumped in their neighborhoods that were illegal, the lack of law enforcement. It was something's going to happen because the Latino community's leadership is left wing, mostly, at least, yeah, and they don't represent the people that they say they represent. I saw that Sheriff Villanueva, remember him, the Los Angeles sheriff, who was a
Yes.
Democrat. He was kind of, during the early days of COVID, kind of extreme in enforcing those rules, and he was a Democratic stalwart. He's now flipped to the Republican Party. I think he's probably going to run for governor.
Well,
Something.
let us pray. Hey, Victor, we have time for one more topic. I mentioned earlier Maine and some political hijinks going on up there, and it's really much in line with what we've been talking about on this show today. And we're going to get your thoughts on this when we come back from these final important messages.
I would like to take a moment to welcome a new sponsor, Vibrance. The ingredients in Vibrance Super C Serum can replace your day creams, night creams, wrinkle creams, neck creams, and even dark spot reducers. Made in USA of the highest quality ingredients, including vitamin C, hyaluronic acid, vitamin B5, and vitamin E, Super C Serum delivers noticeable results. Simplify your skincare routine. Get a healthier complexion and minimize wrinkles and age spots with Vibrance. And if you don't find it better than your current skincare routine, you'll get a full refund. Go to vibrance.com/Victor and save up to 37% and free shipping. That's Vibrance, Vibrance, Vibrance.com/Victor. I used it for the first time the other day, and it made my skin immediately feel softer and moister. What a difference.
We are back with the Victor Davis Hanson Show. Victor, here's a headline: Maine's shocking assault on democracy and free speech. I'll just read this quickly. The talk about tone deaf to what's going on. And we remember, 80% of Americans do not oppose men in women's sports. The Democrat majority in the Maine House of Representatives on a party line vote has stripped Republican Laurel Libby not only of her right to speak on the floor, but of her right to vote in the chamber, leaving her constituents effectively unrepresented. It did this solely to punish Libby, a Republican, for dissenting from the Democrat party line on transgender athletes in women's and girls' sports. Now, Victor, it seems like Representative Libby has taken this case to the Supreme Court, asking for some emergency action. Thus far, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, I guess it's her district, the North New England, has slow-walked the emergency application, sitting on it for 3 days, and then yesterday asking for a response to be filed by next Thursday, which is actually this coming Thursday, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, Victor, tone
That's
deafness.
logical, isn't it? She was the one during her confirmation hearing that was asked to define a woman, remember? She said she was unable to define a woman. So maybe she's still confused about that. There was also a survey, did you see it, Jack, about the 9 justices? And it was about those who had the most speech, who talked the most in minutes, and they ranked them.
No, I didn't see this.
Yeah,
Clarence Thomas has the least, I think.
Yes, she was. Well, it was kind of gender specific. The 3 most vocal she was first, Justice Brown, and then Kagan, and then Comey Barrett. And the men were less talkative. But she was the latest, most recent appointee, but also the loudest in the sense of talking all the time. But this whole thing about transgenderism, it's one of the strangest things about the Democratic Party. They know that after the 2024 election, they outspent them. They had the money. They had $1 billion. See, a lot of people say, well, it wasn't a landslide because he only won by 2,300,000 votes, and he only won by 1.5%, and he got 49.8. He didn't get 50, and Obama got a better electoral college than he did. Yes, 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 but he had $1 billion more spent against him, and he had 95% negative coverage of him, and they tried to kill him twice, and he still did that. That's how to look at and that's something that they just can't get around, that people don't support these issues. So the Maine legislature can talk all they want about biological men participating in women's sport, but their own constituencies have daughters, and their daughters are sports women, and they don't support this. They don't. Nobody wants their daughter to go into a volleyball match and have a 6-foot man who says he's a woman slam a volleyball down her throat. They just don't want to do it. And that's just a fact. And yet they keep hammering this issue. And then the second problem with it is they were the party that told us women's liberation. This is the year of the woman, ERA. They drummed it into our heads. And they are now the most anti-woman party imaginable on this particular topic. They don't care about women's records. They don't care about equal opportunity for women in women's sports. And if you say to them, just politely, I had a question not too long ago. I was trying to remember where I was speaking with somebody who took issue with me on this matter. And I just said, why don't we have a separate category? And he said something like, oh, like transgender. I mean, the Special Olympics, as if these people are, trying to suggest that I thought they were somehow impaired. I didn't say that. I said just categories which are distinctive by men, by gender, women, and if you think this is a third gender, then let's have it transgendered. And they
can have their own graduation ceremonies.
Yes, they could have their own graduation,
right?
but why don't they do that? Because they don't do that because going back to the 19th century, Havelock Ellis and others, and also the British government commissioned a study to find out how many people were really traditionally suffering from gender dysphoria. It's about 0.001%. It's a very minuscule. It's less than 1 in 1,000. And so there's a very small constituent. They can say, oh, everybody's transgendering in Hollywood. 30% of the brown undergraduates want to. That is a cultural phenomenon based on the media saturation with a very, very little tiny group of people. And so they know that if they had a transgendered sport and the sport was intended to satisfy the transgendered community, a sense of belonging, there wouldn't be enough people to go to it. So they want
Leah Thomas would be swimming against himself.
Yes. They want to piggyback onto a very popular women's sport and deracinate it and drain it and weaken it. I have another little rant before we finish. You don't watch the show The Last of Us, do you?
I do not. What is it?
It's a story about the end of the world. It's an Armageddon apocalyptic story where a fungal disease has killed everybody, but there's enclaves of people who are still surviving years later. And there's the girl who was in the Game of Thrones, Lady Marmont. I think her name's Bella something. She's in it, and Pablo Pascal, who's a really good actor, he was in Game of Thrones. And he, for the first year, led her, because she's immune for some reason, and people want her blood or something. So they have an odyssey around the United States, and they fight vigilante groups and there's a thin anti-Christian, because all the people who are crazy seem to be Christians, or, you know what I mean, course, but enclaves of people who haven't been infected. But my point is, the actress is gay, and now there's a new actress in it is gay. So season 2 comes, but of course, the guy who is the hero of the whole thing is her shepherd, the guy who fights off all the zombies and all the crazy people to make sure this one little girl, who's actually, the actress is probably about 19, but she plays at this time 12 or 13, that she's safe because somewhere, sometime, they'll be able to use her blood to save mankind, right? Even though they want to kill her and drain it. So he's kind of violent, but he's the best actor. Well, they killed him off in the second episode. Remember the John Wayne movie, The Cowboys, where they killed John Wayne off very early?
No,
In that,
I never saw
yeah.
that, but
Well, Westerns,
yeah,
that it was a canon.
yeah,
If you really do want to lose your audience, you don't kill off.
right.
Did John Wayne die in The Sands of Iwo Jima?
He did,
He did, but he got
but
killed
at
at
the
the
very
end.
end,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you don't kill your hero, but they killed him. And then they changed the emphases to her. And then they had a surrogate young girl who's a gay actor. And so they're now trying to revenge the people who killed him. But in this latest episode, they have to have a homosexual love scene, and it is explicit. And they see an ancient pride building with a pride flag that, from years ago. And they had an earlier segment where a guy who was a Mr. Know-it-all, and he had a generator and he was self-sufficient. Somebody wandered in and they ended up in bed together. So my point I'm making is that issue now dominates the whole story. And the one thing that people wanted to see is this jack of all trades kind of Renaissance man who was really smart. He kills the zombies, he fights these militias, and he protects this girl, and he develops a very wholesome mentor relationship with her. He's dead now, and he's replaced by a gay woman, and I think in the movie they're 15 or 16, but they're shown in kind of a very explicit sexual congress. Amid all the zombies, they're attacked by zombies, but they go into a warehouse and have sex together, and that is half of the show.
Yeah.
And so what I'm getting at is, whether it's the radical gay or radical trans, whatever it is, they want to mainstream this, even though they're a very small segment of the population. And it's almost every perceived enemy of this has to be the cisgendered male patriarch who, he's too toxic masculinity that saves her numerous times. He's got to get it. And who would kill him if you were the screenwriter? Well, you'd have to have a feminist woman who would beat him up and then drive a spike through his head. And that's how she killed him, the hero. And then all of the heroes are either women or gay. It's very strange. I can't watch it anymore because it's lost. It would be like reading the Odyssey and all of a sudden Calypso or Circe killed Odysseus, and just said, listen, you toxic man, you ran away from your wife. She's been gone. You haven't been there in 20 years. I'm a dominant feminist hero. And Circe and Calypso did have sex with Odysseus, but you're going to be, we're going to be here and you're no good. Or have him go back, I guess, just when he arrives in Ithaca, and just as he's ready to organize Eumaeus and Telemachus to fight the suitors who are eating the suitor, he gets killed. And then Telemachus becomes gay. And and he has a relationship maybe with one of the suitors or so. I don't know, but it's not the stuff that appeals to a lot of people. And I'm not saying just because it's gay. It's not the gay issue. It's the idea that you warp the plot. You know what I mean, Jack? You deviate from a classical plot of male hero who is kind of a Shane type character, takes on to protect a little girl for humanity, and he fights everything successfully. And in the process, he trains her to be self-sufficient. And then they kill him prematurely. A woman kills him, and then he's replaced by a gay woman, and they're partners. And the point out they're making things in the plot that that don't make sense. They're there. If you're fighting
Gratuitous. Yeah.
zombies and you're in a warehouse and they're all around you, and you got on the left side zombies that want to eat you, on the right side you've got a militia that wants to kill you, you're not going to have sex. You know what I'm saying?
I dig.
Yeah.
Maybe Rick and Victor Laszlo would be kissing in a remake of Casablanca.
Yeah, it would be exactly like that. That all of a sudden, Rick comes in. He wants the transport papers. He comes up to Humphrey Bogart's room, and Humphrey says, "You know, where is Ingrid Bergman?" And he says, "She's out the door." Well, and then he just jumps on, because in the scene, one of them and then they jump, and then they show graphically they're having sex. What would be the purpose of that other than an agenda? Is what I'm saying.
Yes.
So Last of Us has gone the way of Budweiser and the
Right.
Target transgendered underwear and all that stuff.
And this is the world we live in, but hopefully someone is sweeping up after the elephants, Victor. So
I hope so. Anyway,
we are at the end of the little road here of Victor's great wisdom sharing. I want to say before I read a final thing that I want to thank people who have written me, and a lot have lately, for Civil Thoughts. That's the free weekly email newsletter I do for the Center for Civil Society, where we are trying to strengthen civil society. And every Friday, Civil Thoughts comes out in your email inbox. It's 14 recommended readings, great pieces I've come across the previous week. Go to civilthoughts.com and sign up. It's as easy as that. And while you're going to places to sign up, go to The Blade of Perseus, victorhanson.com. Sign up there too. You can get on the email list there and get a weekly email, but do subscribe also. Victor, oh my gosh, there's so many comments now, so many, now that we're on YouTube. And last episode you did with the great Sammy Wink, I think there's about 500 to 600, somewhere in that range, just that one show. But here's one comment that I pulled out of there from Michael Wilson 7971. Good morning, Victor and Sammy. Another great show. I got my mother watching on Saturdays now. She likes the show and Sammy. She is learning a lot. She needs a different news source than Spectrum News. I especially thank Victor for his wealth of knowledge and for continuing to educate America in a calm, rational, truthful way. Thank you so much. There are so many comments like this. Yeah, very true. Victor, you've been wonderful in rantio ergo sum. I love it. I'm sure our listeners and viewers do too. Thanks for all the wisdom you shared. Folks, thanks for checking in, no matter what platform you're on. Thanks for watching and listening. And we will be back soon with another episode of the Victor Davis Hanson Show. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, for listening and viewing. Thank you.